6 flag-draped coffins, 6 American families standing in silence at Dover Air Force Base on Saturday. 6 soldiers from Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, and Florida, ages 20 to 54, coming home in transfer cases instead of on their feet. And Donald Trump, standing at attention, saluting each one of them, said absolutely nothing. Not because he was overcome with grief, not because the moment was too sacred for words, but because his White House still has not figured out how to talk about the fact that American soldiers are dying in a war Trump chose to start, while the Dow Jones crashes, oil crosses $100 a barrel, and a 7th American soldier dies before the weekend is over. Here is the complete picture of Trump's silence, the casualty crisis he created, the markets melting down in real time, and the one moment this week that left an entire Pentagon briefing room in stunned silence. Their names deserve to be said out loud because Trump's administration spent days not saying them. Captain Coady A. Cork, 35, of Winter Haven, Florida. Sergeant First Class Noah L. Tightjens, 42, of Bellevue, Nebraska. Sergeant First Class Nicole M. Amor, 39, of White Bear Lake, Minnesota, who had been scheduled to come home to her husband Joey and their 2 children within days of her death. Sergeant Declan Coady, 20, of West Des Moines, Iowa, just 20 years old. Major Jeffrey O'Brien, 45, and Chief Warrant Officer 3, Robert M. Marzon, 54. All 6 were members of the 103rd Sustainment Command based in Des Moines, Iowa, an Army Reserve unit that provides food, fuel, water, ammunition, and supplies. They were not frontline combat troops. They were logistics and support personnel, and according to a CNN investigation cited by the Center for American Progress, they were stationed in what sources described as a makeshift office space with inadequate protection when an Iranian drone found them at the port of Shuaiba in Kuwait on March 1st, just one day after Operation Epic Fury began. Sergeant First Class Nicole Amor's husband Joey said she had been scheduled to return home to him and their 2 children within days of her death. As protocol required, Trump did not speak during the dignified transfer. He saluted as each flag-draped transfer case was carried from the military aircraft to awaiting vehicles. The families were largely silent as they observed the ritual, which lasted about half an hour. Afterward, Trump told reporters on Air Force One as he returned to Florida, "It's a very sad day. I'm glad we paid our respects." That was it. 11 words. I'm glad we paid our respects. For 6 Americans who died in a war he started, stationed in a makeshift office with inadequate protection, killed by a drone that U.S. intelligence officials say Russia helped Iran find. The Dover silence on Saturday was actually the most dignified moment of a week in which Trump and his team serially stumbled over how to address American war deaths, producing a string of comments that left military families, veterans groups, and members of both parties furious. After the first 3 deaths were reported, Trump told NBC News on Sunday, "We have 3, but we expect casualties, but in the end it's going to be a great deal for the world." He was immediately inserting those deaths into a cost-benefit analysis. Then, in a video posted to social media that same day, Trump appeared to break from his teleprompter and said, "Sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more." That's the way it is for the parents of Sergeant Declan Coady, who was 20 years old, for the husband of Sergeant First Class Nicole Amor, who was days away from coming home. Military.com noted that this was not a new pattern for Trump. In 2017, he told the widow of a slain soldier that he knew what he signed up for. The father of another slain soldier accused Trump of going back on a promise to send a $25,000 check. And in 2020, Trump downplayed traumatic brain injuries suffered by U.S. service members when Iran fired missiles at a base in Iraq, saying, "I heard that they had headaches and a couple of other things, but I would say, and I can report it, it is not very serious." Trump also said on the day deaths were first confirmed, "That often happens in war, but we are doing this not for now, we are doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission." The political damage of those words was immediate. Democrats called the comments callous, veterans organizations expressed outrage, and even some Republicans, privately, told reporters they were cringing. The White House spent the rest of the week trying to thread an impossible needle, honoring the dead while not drawing attention to the mounting cost of a war that lacked congressional authorization and a clear exit strategy. Then came the moment that stopped the entire country cold. Wednesday, March 4th. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is at the Pentagon podium for his regular briefing. Journalists are asking about the 6 confirmed American deaths, about the 18 others who have been seriously wounded, about how the families of these soldiers are being supported, about whether the makeshift facilities where soldiers were stationed were adequately protected. Hegseth took time from the briefing to complain about the media coverage itself. When a few drones get through or tragic things happen, it's front-page news, Hegseth said. "I get it, the press only wants to make the president look bad, but try for once to report the reality." According to a report in The Atlantic, after Hegseth made those comments, there was a stunned silence in the briefing room. A stunned silence in a room full of reporters who cover the Pentagon every day, people who have covered multiple wars, multiple casualty announcements, multiple dignified transfers. None of them, apparently, had heard a defense secretary suggest that reporting on the deaths of American soldiers was a plot to make the president look bad. Evidently, Hegseth would prefer a media environment in which the deaths of U.S. troops are downplayed. The White House doubled down. Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt called reporting on the soldier deaths sensationalist. She insisted the administration was winning decisively. And Trump himself, asked whether he was concerned about the rising death toll, said he expected casualties and that, in the end, it's going to be a great deal for the world. Meanwhile, Iran's National Security Council head Ali Larijani posted on X claiming that some of the dead Americans were not dead at all, that they had been captured, and that the U.S. was misrepresenting captures as combat deaths. The Trump administration denied the claim. But the allegation added another layer of chaos and uncertainty to an information environment the White House was already failing to manage. While Trump was going mute on soldier deaths and Hegseth was attacking reporters for covering them, the financial markets were delivering their own verdict on the war, and it was brutal. Oil prices surged past $100 a barrel on Sunday, March 8th, the first time crude crossed that threshold since Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Global oil prices surged by more than 25% since the start of the war. The national average gasoline price reached $3.41 per gallon on Saturday, according to AAA, rising by 43 cents in a single week. The war is costing the U.S. an estimated $1 billion a day, according to 2 congressional sources with knowledge of the matter. On Tuesday, the Dow tumbled more than 1,200 points shortly after the opening bell, though it recovered to close just 400 points by end of day. Analysts had previously expected Brent crude to trade at about $60 per barrel in 2026. Instead, Brent crude rocketed to $93 per barrel by Friday. Goldman Sachs published a worst-case scenario in which $100 per barrel becomes reality within 5 weeks, then quickly updated that forecast to say it could happen as soon as the following week. Strait of Hormuz traffic is down about 90% compared with normal levels, according to ship tracker Marine Traffic. At least 9 commercial vessels have been targeted in attacks in or near the strait since the start of the conflict, prompting multiple insurance firms to cancel coverage for vessels in the Gulf. The Strait of Hormuz is also a vital artery for fertilizer transport. Fertilizer prices were already elevated prior to the Iran conflict. Now, spring planting budgets face more strain due to rising prices for urea, a nitrogen fertilizer used for corn, dealing a blow to American farmers already coping with dwindling markets and lower crop prices. The top 5 largest container shipping firms, including Maersk, suspended their operations in the Persian Gulf. Instead of traveling through the Suez Canal, companies are sending cargo fleets around the Cape of Good Hope at the tip of South Africa, adding weeks to delivery times and billions in costs. And Iran's parliament speaker went directly after Trump's credibility on the economy. Trump said oil prices wouldn't go too high, but now that they've risen, he says they'll correct soon, Speaker Mohammed Bakir Kalibaf posted on social media. He is not wrong. Trump said gas prices would be low and falling fast in his State of the Union. Now they are $3.41 and climbing toward $4. And then on Saturday evening, just hours after the Dover dignified transfer, the death toll rose again. A 7th U.S. service member died on Saturday. U.S. Central Command said the unidentified soldier had been wounded at the scene of an attack on U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia on March 1st and died on Saturday. Further details were not immediately available. 7 Americans dead, at least 18 more seriously wounded, and Iran's top security official claiming on social media that some of those deaths are actually captures, that American soldiers are being held as prisoners of war by the Iranian government, and that the Trump administration is covering it up. The White House denied the prisoner claim categorically, but they provided no evidence. They offered no independent verification. They simply said, Iran is lying. That may be true. Iran lies. But the Trump administration has also been caught misrepresenting facts about this war repeatedly, calling the Manab school strike a failed Iranian missile until U.S. investigators concluded it was likely an American bomb, calling the CT scan an MRI for weeks, withholding the Epstein documents that named the president. When a government's credibility is this damaged on this many separate fronts, trust us, Iran is lying is not a satisfying answer to the families of 7 dead Americans who deserve the truth. The Center for American Progress put it in terms every American should hear. Who foots the bill for this needless, immoral war? The American taxpayer. Already, the war has cost at least $5 billion and created global economic instability. There is one more dimension to this story that explains why Trump's silence and stumbling over soldier deaths cuts so much deeper than it might with any other president. Trump received deferments to avoid the Vietnam War draft and has remarked several times about wanting to receive military medals, once saying, "I always wanted to get the Purple Heart." He has never served a day in uniform, and yet he has consistently put himself in the same sentence as combat veterans, comparing his business sacrifices to military service, suggesting he knows what soldiers go through, claiming a special connection to the troops. In March 2025, Trump seemed unfamiliar with the cases of 4 U.S. soldiers who had gone missing during a training exercise in Lithuania. Asked whether he'd been briefed on the situation, Trump paused and said, "No, I haven't." The soldiers were later found dead. Just 2 months ago, Trump caused an international incident by claiming that NATO allies stayed a little back from the front lines in Afghanistan, a claim that deeply offended countries that lost hundreds of their own soldiers in that conflict. And now, in the Iran war, CNN reported that the 6 soldiers who died were stationed in a makeshift office space with inadequate protection. The question that every military family, every veteran organization, and every member of the armed services committees in Congress is now demanding an answer to. Who made the decision to station U.S. Army Reserve logistics personnel in an unprotected facility in a war zone on the very first day of a war without adequate air defense coverage in place? That question has not been answered. Hegseth has not answered it, Trump has not answered it, and the White House response to every reporter who asks it is the same one they give to every uncomfortable question about this war: attack the journalist for asking. Here is the bottom line: 7 Americans are dead, 18 more are seriously wounded. Oil crossed $100 a barrel. The Dow has shed nearly 2,000 points since the war began. The national average gas price jumped 43 cents in a single week. The Strait of Hormuz is 90% closed to shipping. Maersk and the world's largest shipping companies have abandoned the Gulf. And when asked how to talk about dead American soldiers, Trump said, "That's the way it is," while his defense secretary told reporters that covering those deaths was a media plot to make the president look bad. The families of Captain Coady Cork, Sergeant First Class Noah Tietjens, Sergeant First Class Nicole Amor, who was days from coming home, Sergeant Declan Coady, who was 20 years old, Major Jeffrey O'Brien, Chief Warrant Officer Robert Marzan, and a 7th soldier whose name has not yet been released. Those families are not interested in cost-benefit analyses. They are not interested in talking points about great deals for the world. They want to know why their loved ones were in a makeshift office without adequate protection on day 1 of a war nobody voted for. That question is still waiting for an answer.